All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Emily Gall. I'm the Assistant Director at the ACM here in Chicago. Tonight we're going to go over just general information that's helpful to you as a parent guardian of a student going on one of our programs, likely in the fall. So I'd like to keep the information very general. If you have program-specific questions, so if your student's going to Florence and you have a very specific question that's relevant to Florence or Italy, I ask that you please wait till the end or contact either myself or Marley separately. That way we can get through all of the information. So just so you know, the webinar will be recorded and posted on the ACM parent webpage. I've listed the webpage there, so you're able to go to that directly, and if there's additional information on there as well. I have muted everyone just for better sound quality, so you can use the question tab to ask any questions that come up. And then again, there's my email address and Marley's email address, and I'll introduce her in just a second. So tonight we will talk a little bit about what ACM is, the academics, what you and your students can be doing to get ready for the program, talk about the first few days on site, communications while the students on the program, managing emergencies, safety, and health, as well as insurance, and then some additional resources at the end. So there's 3 of us on our team in Chicago. Joan Gillespie is the ACM Vice President and Director of Off-Campus Study, and she's shown there on the left. That's me in the middle, that's in Botswana. And Marley Stein is a program coordinator, and she works with students going to Costa Rica, Florence, Brazil, and then Newberry for the fall programs. Oh, as well as Amsterdam, sorry. All of our program locations have on-site staff. So when students arrive, they will be either with either a program director, a permanent program director, or a visiting faculty director from one of the ACM campuses. There's also various on-site staff who support the director and or teach our additional staff members on site. Many of our sites contract with local faculty to teach courses. And then we also have strong connections with partner institutions throughout the world and on all of these programs. So what is the ACM? The ACM is a consortium of 14 small liberal arts colleges, mostly in the Midwest, and we also have Colorado College. So most of the students do come from these 14 campuses, but we do have a handful that come from what we call affiliate schools. So their schools have decided to partner with ACM on offering the programs to their students, and they're all small liberal arts colleges as well. So one thing that sets ACM programs apart are our liberal arts academics. So there are smaller programs that match the personal attention of the student's home college and what it's like to be at a small liberal arts college. So the programs are very small, so between 10 and 15 students likely, and therefore the classes are small. They get a lot of individual attention. The programs are site-based, so we take advantage of where the program is located, and you'll see pictures here of groups in Florence and in Tanzania who are out in the field, however you might characterize that, learning and seeing what they've learned in the classroom. And most of our programs also have an undergraduate research or independent study project associated or as part of, you're not seeing this? I apologize that the slide's not working, so just one second. You should be able to see it now, sorry. Oops, I apologize. These are the other slides in case you are interested in seeing the photos. So getting ready to go. You as a parent or guardian, we encourage you to create a resource file. So this is a file that you keep of hard copies or electronic copies, whatever is best for you, with your son or daughter's passport, a copy of their passport, a copy of their visa. We recommend photocopying both sides of the credit card, so in case you need to be in touch with the bank if a card is stolen or lost, you have easy access to that information, as well as their flight information. Then also keeping a copy of the student's U.S. insurance card, and then for international programs, the CISI insurance, which I'll talk about a little bit later about, the insurance card that will be issued to them at the beginning of August. And then if there's anything that you or your student asks you to do while they're abroad or here in Chicago that helps assist with their homeschool processes, like registration or housing. So this information we recommend you keep separate so you have access to it. Just in case anything were to happen, it's easily accessible to you, and then you can also get that information to the student. We also encourage you to have a conversation with your student about money and budgeting, and kind of what the best plan is for getting funds while abroad, especially abroad, but even here in Chicago, we recommend the best way is using an ATM. So they're located all over, and depending on where they are, they'll issue the local currency. So we really emphasize to students during orientation that they need to budget for all the expenses they expect for the semester, and we encourage you to have that conversation as well, so there's no surprises. We also encourage you to have a discussion about your plan for communication with the student while they are on the program. So for international programs, sometimes the cell service is a little bit trickier. Definitely wireless is not universal. So students might be used to having instant access to communication with all their friends and family, but that might not be the case depending on where the student is going. So I would encourage you to talk through this with your students so that they know what you expect of them, such as I would like you to check in once a week or once a day, and kind of think about how you'll do that, and I'll talk about that in a second. Also, cultural preparation. It's really helpful if you know a little bit about where your student's going and what they might expect. Obviously, online, there's a ton of resources. The student also has a handbook that we've worked on, and there's a lot of information about the program sites, so you can also take a look at those. And in terms of what we expect from the students, we've been in contact with them regularly, almost just about every 2 weeks. So the students have all submitted copies of their passport or visas, a variety of forms, so housing forms for Chicago, host family preferences, comprehensive release forms. We've also asked them to submit information about their arrival and their flights to their program site. We've given them packing suggestions, and that is in the handbook as well. And in addition to the handbook cultural preparation, we've recently launched a pre-departure Canvas site, which is an online module course for each of the students to complete, and this allows for a lot of reflection and kind of planning, setting some goals for their semester off campus, as well as kind of how they can be responsible as a student. And then it also goes back to just regular logistical things like health, safety, emergency planning, and things like that. So we always like to cover with parents the first few days on site because it's a bit chaotic when students arrive. They're new to the program site. This might be their first time abroad, so it can be a little bit overwhelming. And what we do is we confirm with the director once everyone's arrived and kind of checked in, whatever that means for the program site. And for all of our international students or international programs, the ACM, usually myself, will send in an arrival email to the parents just letting them know everyone's arrived, there were no issues, and then reminding them of our contact information. So depending on the program site, orientation lasts anywhere from 2 days to a couple weeks, kind of like spread out over a couple weeks. So students will be really busy during those first few days, getting registered for classes, meeting each other, meeting their host families, getting situated in their new city. So it's a busy time, also kind of getting over jet lag. So we emphasize to students and to parents that this requires a lot of flexibility, patience, an open mind, and they need to start thinking about managing their expectations for their semester. But also, once they get on site, they usually kind of adjust those expectations just based on what they're seeing. So we encourage you to talk with your student about how they will get in touch with you once they've arrived. Like I said, some places wireless internet is not going to be available as readily as it is here. Same with communications, depending on how and when they'll get their cell phone, it could be up to a week. So you just want to be aware of that. Kind of going back to the communication, this is always a big question. So we require all students on international programs and domestically to have a local cell phone number, and we've given quite a bit of information to students on various options depending on where they are going. The best option is to purchase a prepaid SIM card on site that allows them to add credit when they need it. This will allow for phone calls, texts, both to each other and within the country, but also internationally. Nowadays, most students have smartphones, so you will likely need to help them, depending on their plan, figure out a way to get it unlocked. That is what will allow it to be able to be used in another country, and that's something you can talk with your cell phone provider with. The other option is students can buy a cheap cell phone on site, so it's really up to them, but they do have to have a local phone number. And if they have a smartphone or have access to wireless, recommend several apps that are kind of very universally used, and some WhatsApp, for instance, you might have heard of it, but pretty much everyone in India and Tanzania use WhatsApp as kind of their primary texting. Then also in China, students going to China, a lot of applications are blocked, so they're Google, Facebook, all of those. So students will be using WeChat, and I apologize that I don't have the little icon for that, but I recommend that you also download that, and that's also a way that you can speak with your student. And then also FaceTime, Skype, all those kinds of things. As long as wireless is available, you should be able to use them, but there might be some limitations. As I mentioned, I want to just go over what you can expect from ACM. As I said, for the international programs, we'll send an arrival date email just letting you know all the students arrived, along with our contact information for the semester. Our communication policy states that we can contact parents and guardians, and we kind of classify that as who the student has identified as their emergency contact in their application. And so we maintain that list, and if there is an issue, a widespread issue on a program site, such as a volcanic eruption in Costa Rica, or any kind of widespread emergency, we will contact parents via email and let them know the status of the situation and what we're doing to work on it. We always encourage students to tell parents as soon as they are able, but sometimes that's just not possible due to communication barriers or access to internet, Wi-Fi, or the like. So a little bit about what ACM does to manage emergencies and kind of do some proactive managing. So all students are international program students are required to register with STEP, which is a Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, and that's through the U.S. Department of State. And this service that they provide links them to the U.S. consulate or embassy in the country that they're going. And the embassy and consulate can then send reports or emails, alerts, warnings, whatever it might be, to let people who are in the country, American citizens who are in the country, know if there's something going on that they should know about. And I also receive those warnings and will pass them along, but it's easier if students get them themselves. ACM has a 24/7 emergency phone, so students, their first point of contact in an emergency on site is the director, and then either the director or the student can call the emergency phone, and that will likely go to myself or Joan or Marley in our office, depending on who's in charge at that time. And we do a 3-day staff training on emergency procedures. I take that back. We do a 3-day training in Chicago, and much of that is actually on health, safety, and emergency procedures. So the staff are very well versed in this. All over the world they come and we have long conversations. We're constantly being updated on what's going on through our insurance provider, so we have very accurate information and can pass that along. The directors are asked to put together a site-specific emergency procedure. That is, if there is something that is going on and it affects the entire group, there's alternative meeting points, there's phone trees, things like that. So it's really dependent upon what program site and what's appropriate for that site. And those go over, those instructions and guidelines will be communicated to students during their orientation and kind of throughout the semester. In addition, communication with the student's emergency contact if there were something to happen with the group. As I mentioned above, the 24/7 emergency phone, that's our phone number down at the bottom, that 312-561-5911. But you can always reach the ACM regular line. It's the 561-5000, and that will give you instructions on how to reach one of us in an emergency. So 3 main concerns for off-campus study, and this is pretty universal, are petty theft, choices around alcohol and incidences that result from alcohol use, and traffic. So all 3 of these things are covered during student orientation and are all very different based on the country or city students are in. So this has gone over very thoroughly with students in person. We also emphasize to students that they can reduce their risk by practicing smart city living. So using common sense, being aware of their surroundings are very, very basic things, but something we emphasize to students, because for some students, going to Florence is a big change from being in Iowa, in a small town in Iowa. So there's certain things that students need to be aware of that they just might not think about, such as leaving their laptop sitting at the coffee shop while they go to the bathroom. So for us that live in cities, we would never do that. But if you do that on your home campus in the library, it might not seem like something you need to worry about. So the on-site staff go over a lot of these things with students during orientation. So for students, we go over this with them in their pre-departure Canvas site as well as on-site. So students should be encouraged to follow routine practices, so whatever that might be for them. If they require 8 hours of sleep a night, they should continue that. If they run or exercise, they should continue that. Make sure that students take prescription medications for the entire semester is very important, especially abroad. It's harder to get the exact medications that students might require or that are easily accessible here in the U.S. If you have questions about any vaccinations or recommendations about medications, you can consult with your physician or go to cdc.gov. They maintain a list for every country of recommendations. For students who are going on international programs, they will all be enrolled in CISI insurance, and I will do that for the fall programs around August 1st. They will get an email from CISI to register online in their portal and print their ID. There's also a lot of information on the portal for students to refer they can find out if there's a doctor within where they're living. They can find out other safety and security information about their program site, so there's a lot of information in there. In addition to that, they can submit claims. So most of the students will need to pay, if they use the insurance, they'll pay out of pocket, and then they'll collect the receipts and submit it for payment. The nice thing about CISI is they're very quick, so they usually can get the money back within a week, so it should not be an issue. It's a very comprehensive plan, so almost everything is covered, including pre-existing conditions. The only things that are not covered are pre-existing pregnancies, and personal belongings are not covered in this. There's a few other very minor things that are not covered. But students, if there is a medical emergency or they need to seek treatment while they are at their program site, they can feel free to use the insurance. And again, all of our staff are very well versed in this insurance and are able to help students get to a medical appointment or make an appointment for them, whatever that might be. So students should feel free to contact anyone on staff or myself in Chicago, and I can help with that. All students have also completed a medical history form, which I've been reviewing and contacting students to follow up. So a little bit about what you can expect and maybe what you might hear from your son or daughter while they're on their program. We talk a little bit about these two things within their pre-departure orientation, one being culture bumps and the iceberg concept of culture. So culture bumps are kind of ways that students kind of experience shocks throughout the semester, that maybe they're expecting one thing, but then they see something else and it kind of throws them for a loop. So we encourage students to think about these moments. We acknowledge that they're going to happen and be open to all these bumps that might come along and kind of think about how they might cope with them. The other thing is the iceberg concept of culture, which is a very small, I apologize. So we talk with students about kind of what is culture. And one is there's the surface culture, which are things that you can see and hear and smell and things like that. But there's so much more underneath the surface called the deep culture. So these are gender roles, concepts of time, things like this. The students might not be able to see, but they will experience throughout their semester. And it's likely that they're going to call, text, video chat with you and share some of these frustrations that might come up throughout the semester. So we kind of talk about this venting versus processing their experience. So we encourage you to listen, to help them process. Sometimes they just need time to vent, and that might be all. but kind of encourage them to see the good in everything that's happening and encourage their growth as a young person and how this experience is contributing to that. So those are a few things you can kind of just listen, encourage, and be that sounding board that a student's really comfortable having. So some additional resources, as I mentioned, the ACM parent website, so acm.edu/parents. There's links on there to many different things as well as just regular information. The student handbook has information about academics, program, and the housing arrangements, as well as that cultural information I was talking about before. And before I take any questions, I wanted to share our contact information as well as which programs we will be working with this academic year. So if you have very specific program questions, I encourage you to reach out to us individually, either myself or Marley, via email or phone. Those are both of our direct lines, so you can contact them. So unfortunately, I'm going to answer a few questions now. The CISI, health insurance is only for international programs. Domestically based programs, students need to have their own U.S.-based insurance. Another question, do you suggest we travel with our child to and from overseas? We actually discourage this. It's a big experience for students to arrive and kind of be part of the group. And so we do, if you want to visit your student at some point, we definitely support that. We do have kind of policies in place that to kind of set some boundaries so students can't have family members or friends with host families. They can't miss any of the program activities or classes because they're hosting visitors. But many of the programs do have breaks, so I encourage you to talk with your student about what might be appropriate for their time, when it might be appropriate for you to visit them. Another question, do you recommend students carry copies of passport or having access to an electronic copy is okay? I would say both, just in case. If a student were to lose their passport and needs to go to the consulate, they would probably require a hard copy. So sometimes printing, depending on where they are, is a little harder. They can keep those kinds of materials locked in either their host family, in a closet, or their luggage, or in the dorm. So I encourage them to have both. They should also keep their passport locked in a safe place. But then having that access to an electronic copy, which ACM also has, so if it were down to if there was something, a big emergency, we have copies of all the students' passports, so we can also forward that on to whoever might need it. Another question, I assume we don't need the college's health insurance policy to get CISI. Yeah, so you do not need additional insurance outside of CISI besides your just regular health insurance plan that you carry in the U.S. It's very important that you keep your son or daughter enrolled in whatever the U.S. health insurance plan is, especially with all the changes going on. We're not sure how that will affect the health insurance, so we don't want students to be not covered when they come back. Also, if a student were to get very ill on a program site and they need to return to the U.S., the CISI insurance would only be valid for 1 or 2 days. So depending on what the treatment might be, you would need to have your U.S. insurance to kind of kick in to cover those costs once a student gets back to the U.S. So how are host families vetted? This varies from program site to program sites, but the sites that do have host families, Every site has kind of a host family coordinator, so somebody who visits host families, checks references, follows up with host families throughout the semester. So these are very well established host families, and when there's issues, they're also available. We very rarely have issues with host families, and if we do, it's usually a conversation that needs to happen. It's a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, and students and usually an ACM staff member in the host family sit down and kind of work everything out. Another question, how much is insurance? The insurance for international programs is covered in the program fee that you'll pay your college. Are students always placed in twos? It really depends on the program site. Some of the sites, like India, students are by themselves with their host families. Tanzania, they'll likely be in twos. Jordan, they're usually in twos. I think what other? Costa Rica, they're by themselves. In Florence, they're usually in twos. I think I got all of them there. When will we know if our child received a part-time job? So ACM does offer a student fellowship program, but we don't offer any other employment opportunities for students on our programs. I know they're reviewing those student fellowship assistantships, applications right now. So I would say within the next week or so, students would know if they were selected as one of the recipients of that assistantship. So I hope that this was useful for everyone. I know it was quick, but I really appreciate everyone logging on this evening. And again, if anyone has any questions, please jot down our numbers, and we will be in touch with you directly. And yes, I just got a question from David. I will respond to your email separately. And there are assistantships in Chicago. We have a communications assistant and an administrative assistant. For both the Newberry for the Newberry program, we just have a communications assistantship. So the applications were due July 1st, but I think there are still a couple spots that have not been filled. So again, Marley Stein, she's the one that is coordinating the assistantship. So you can encourage your son or daughter to be in touch with her directly if they're still interested in this. All right, again, thank you so much, and we look forward to having your son or daughters on our programs this fall. And please reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.